The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
It's that time on the mat. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by a man whose sparkling commentary will take over the airwaves in this particular episode, or edition, as Scott Fensloff would say. Doug Van Gelder, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I never did take time to thank you the other night for your little soiree that you sponsored and had up at the Waterloo Boathouse.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun.
Okay. Yeah, we had a good time at that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And we had a volunteer recognition night that you were a part of, too.
Yeah, that was the Monday before Nationals.
Right, on the 13th.
You know, it's always Dan Gable. I just love the guy.
Well,
he was there, and I mean, it's fun to listen to him, and he's a good listener, too. I think that's probably a key that we miss sometimes, is how good of a listener they are.
He loves to pick up data and information and always asking more questions and digging deeper. And I agree with that. And before we get to Dan, I do want to say it's the Jay Roberts Volunteer Recognition event, and Jay passed away in 2011. You just can't thank him enough for his contributions, and I miss him all the time. He was a lawyer here in town, and his contributions to the museum were just endless. And so there were times where I needed a question answered, and I needed someone that could be there, and I don't have that void to fill. So he was a rock, and he still is a rock. That's why we still have the event. But you had mentioned Gable. Last week, Dan was on the show and got some great feedback from people saying Dan's commentary was outstanding. And it was. Just his breakdown of how Corey Clark won the national tournament was just fantastic. And you see why he's the best coach ever.
Yeah.
You get that picture when you talk to him, that he's breaking things down and sees it in a whole different angle that we don't see it. And kudos to Dan on really one of the best interviews we've ever had with Dan on this show.
It really was.
Yeah, and I'm guessing by now we've had him on the show over 50 times, probably.
Sometimes he doesn't seem real interested with us.
Well,
you know,
I don't know.
Probably not interesting because he's got something else that he's working over in his mind.
Yeah, maybe.
But that last week was just over the top.
Yeah, he was locked in, and he had a great interview with him. So thanks to Dan for being on the show, giving us a lot of time, giving us 40 minutes of great commentary. Also, just have to clear something up. Andy Hamilton, who I mentioned last show, he's with TrackWrestling.com. We've had him on the show before. He had mentioned, hey, you threw me under the bus because you said something erroneously. I thought I said it correctly. What I tried to articulate was the last time that two Iowa high school products were in the semifinals at the same time in the same weight class before Brandon Sorensen and Max Thompson did it this year was 2010, when Andrew Long and Matt McDonough were in the semifinals in 2010. He thought I said it was the last time four-time state champions were together, and that's not what I was saying at all. It just so happened that this time around, both happened to be four-time state champions in the semifinals. Brandon Sorensen, which is cool, went to Denver. Max Thompson, it's cool, went to LaPorte, and that's our listenership. That's our area here for KCNZ, so that's pretty special that you have that opportunity to have those guys. But it's a rare thing. It's a special thing. It makes it even more special when you go back to 1963, and you had Bill Dotson from Waterloo East beat Tom Huff from Waterloo West. That's a big deal. That's pretty cool when you think of that history. So Andy
that was a semifinal.
No, that was the finals. That was the finals in 1963 that Bill Dotson won, and he was the only Division I NCAA champion until Kyvan Gadsden won it in 2015. Right. So Andy's still right. The last time that two Iowa high school products were in the semifinals together, either wrestling to each other or on side-by-side mats, before 2017 when Sorensen and Thompson did it, was 2010 when Andrew Long, who happened to be for Iowa State, and then Matt McDonough, who happened to be for Iowa. It's probably going to break down that way most of the time, that it's going to be an Iowa school. It would be fun to just go back and do that historical data and just figure out all of the times that's happened. And I'm guessing it happened a lot more frequently when you go back into that 50s, 60s era, maybe even before that, because, hey, Iowa State Teachers College, Northern Iowa at the time was sending a lot of guys, Cornell College, and then Iowa State was coming into the mix. So I'm guessing it was a little more commonplace than it has been lately. But that's a pretty big gap, 7 years. Yeah. And so that's a big piece of history. And so I'm glad that we're able to recognize that history on this show and then get the background from Andy on that. So we get a chance to break down the NCAA championships even further. We had our first segment on last show to talk about it, and I don't think it's ever enough because there's so many storylines, there's so many topics that we can discuss on what happened. I have a few that I want to talk about, and I want, of course, your commentary on this. The edge of the mat calls. It's a new type of call and how they make it. It's either going to be stalling on one of the wrestlers or another, or it's going to be the continuation. Of the wrestling. I think this year it got called different. I think last year, because it was new and fresh, the officials and the referees were more focused on how they were going to make that call. I think it got called different this year. I think they were a little more lax and maybe calling the continuation. They were certainly less consistent. That's what I mean. I think, but it looked like a different product this year. It just looked like different officiating, even though the rule didn't change. I felt like the continuation call in particular just didn't seem like it was called the same way as it was last year. And I don't have any real data on that. It's just a gut feel watching a lot of wrestling and seeing how it got called last year. And just in your mind, you see it, and then the following season you say, it looks a little bit different. It sounds like you feel the same way in some ways. Yeah, I did.
You know, when there's enough matches to put a feel to it, and you could tell there was certain referees, if they were out there, it was going to get called one way, and if this other referee was out there, it was going to get called a different way, and that's not right.
Yeah, it isn't.
That's right. Confusing to the wrestlers, and it's confusing to the fans, and upsetting to the fans. They want consistency, so the officials really need to work on that consistency angle and not try and put their own spin on it.
What's the solution? Is it a 1-point step out and a 3-point takedown? I'm willing to explore. I'm not saying it's the right answer, but I think something needs to happen because we want more points. We want more activity.
We need to have some discussion on it, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we want to go in that direction.
The referees need to discuss it.
This isn't for discussion because I think it's so sealed tight, and I've mentioned this a few times, but if you have any argument points, I don't know how you're going to. There is no reason that on the backside on consolation, an advancement point on the championship side is worth 1 point. An advancement point on the consolation is worth half a point. Why you would keep a fall, major decision, and tech fall on the consolation side the same amount as the championship side doesn't make any sense. It should be half, just like the advancement point is. So if you have a pin, you get 2 points on the championship side. It should be cut in half on the consolation side. It should be worth 1.
Well, maybe it shouldn't be cut in half to begin with.
It isn't cut in half right now. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're getting a half point on the backside. If you're on the consolations, you're getting a half back.
Yeah, but I think that's fair. That's the.
Well, I'm saying no. That you're going back. You're trying to get placing. You're advancing to that placement.
Yeah. I'm
saying you get the 1 point, not the half point.
I'm saying everything on the consolation should be cut in half, because that's the punishment for going, not punishment, but it's the reward for being in the championship side. You're providing incentive for saying the guys that are on the championship side have additional incentive, because if you have a good wrestler, he can just come back and clear house on the backside and get more points than potentially the first place guy if he's just getting decisions. It doesn't play out fairly, but if you're going to do it, you have to be consistent. So that's just my comment on that. We can move on to other topics, but I wanted to get that off my chest for maybe the 100th time. Third topic of conversation. What is more difficult or impressive, tech fall or a fall?
A fall every time is the most impressive thing you can do in a wrestling match.
Okay, but here's what someone will argue, is you don't accidentally get a technical fall. You could fall into getting a pin. You can catch someone. I don't necessarily like that term because it diminishes that skill set of what it takes to put someone there. But I think mentally you can overcome getting pinned more so than getting tech falled 18-2. I think if you get pinned, you can say,
"If you're so darn dominant, why didn't you pin him?"
Well, I'm with you. I'm saying the fall, but I'm saying the fall from the vantage point of the Gable variety or the Wade Chalice variety, where you go out and you earn it, and maybe not get a headlock to a fall, which I still think is a great move. I still think that's fantastic.
Eric Sinclair would agree.
Well, yeah. And if you can't stay out of it, shame on you. So I'm of the fall variety. I think the fall is more impressive than the tech fall, but the argument will be you don't accidentally get a tech fall. You have to make sure you go out and earn it. You have to put points on the board. You can be behind by a significant margin and still get a fall, and so you don't necessarily have to dominate the match to get a fall. But I am still saying a fall is more impressive than a technical fall.
Okay.
That would be my ultimate choice on that. And I still think it should be the ultimate in the sport. I think that staying off your back is what you need to do.
I can't remember whose match it was or anything, but I can remember somebody that was behind like 11-0, I think it was, and they ended up pinning the other guy. I love that.
Yeah,
I love that one.
Yeah, it's that X factor that you always have. It's the knockout of boxing.
And all that guy could do was just lay there and look at the ceiling.
Yeah. It's a great equalizer. It's great to have that where it just ends the match.
Yeah, that put a buzz in the crowd right now, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
It is good. Hey, we've gotten so excited about this. We haven't had a chance to even talk about who's going to be on the show. We have 2 championship coaches.
Yep.
We seem to have them on after the NCAA tournament a lot, which is pretty cool. We had them on last year after
they were the same deal last year.
Yeah, and we want to keep having them on the show. This is fun to be able to talk.
We'd like to have some others join them.
Yeah, well, hey, there's 5 opportunities in the state of Iowa, 6 if you count the women's, but they're freestyle, so it's a little bit different. But we had 3 national team championships this year, as we mentioned. Gable liked that as we talked about him, but he says the Division I championship drives the ship, and he's right about that. But we know that the NAI and Division III are very important in this state. Grandview crushed the field. Wartburg did a nice job. They really crushed the field, too. They both crushed the field. I guess Grandview did such a crushing that it's hard to
Grandview
compare.
has set the standard.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks back.
We did. And I want to talk about that. But Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach.
He's going to be here today.
Yep, he'll be on the show.
That's who we'll talk with.
Coach at Grandview. And then Eric Keller from Wartburg College will be on the show as well. But the next topic, and this will feed into what we want to talk with Nick Mitchell about. Jason Bodensteiner, who he's also a big fan of yours. Always, whenever there's a Beef sighting or a Doug Van Gelder sighting, we get pretty excited. But we were raving about Grandview's domination at that NAI tournament where the top 3 teams combined were less than Grandview. His question was, is it that impressive given what they might have? Do they have more resources? Are the other programs not invested? Are the administrations more invested at Grandview than they would be at the other programs? And so I would like to get some answers to that because that might be a talking point. What goes into Grandview's success? How are they dominating like this? How are they getting the talent? How are they getting D1 caliber talent to not only Grandview but also to Wartburg? How do they get these guys? And so I think that's going to be a real talking point.
They've had some
with
second
these guys.
chance guys there.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm all for that because it worked out for them.
Yeah.
For the kids. You know, Eric Thompson comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, and you look up and down the lineup, you're right. They've had some great talent in there. Jacob Cologne.
Yep.
Was a great example. I think he could have been Division I if he wanted to be, just given some of the results he had. And there's a guy, he pinned Josh Alber from Northern Iowa early in the season. And that just goes a long way to just showing how deep NAI and Division III can be. And so I want to learn more about that. I want to learn what goes into a Grandview and why they're able to crush the field like this. And a lot of it, to me, has to do with Nick Mitchell's leadership and what he's able to do.
Well, you know, I'm not sure how they got there, but if you're a kid that wants to continue wrestling in college, you're not sure how you stand among the other kids, the other young men or ladies, hopefully in the future more. What are you going to do? Why would you leave Iowa? This guy has been a coach of 9 straight championships. Is that right?
6.
6 straight.
6, yep.
I mean, where else would you go? Why would you go to Southern Oregon or some other place that's an NAIA school? Why wouldn't you go to the place that has 6 national championships? Because they're doing something different and right there.
Well, yeah, it's...
And once you start building it, you know, that's the dynasty that Gable got going. Same thing. Why would I want to go anywhere else? That's where I can be the best.
Yeah, and if you're like you're saying, I like what you're saying, because if you're a wrestler in the state of Iowa, there is no reason to go outside of these borders. You have every opportunity right here, and not everyone's a Division I caliber. But if you aren't, and you're a one-time state champion, and maybe you aren't quite at that Division I level, you have every opportunity right here to get to that high bar. And look at right here, Waverly, Iowa. This is our listenership, 1650 The Fan. You have on our program Nick Mitchell, who went to Wartburg, won the last 6. And you have Eric Keller, the 3 of the last 4, and the one time it was a second place. So they are setting the bar very high at Wartburg, as we know, and it's translating to other programs. And so that gets me excited that we get to have Nick Mitchell and Eric Keller on the show for this reason. We're not just having them on the show to have them on the show. We're having them on because they won championships.
We look at the positive impact that Gable had on the coaching ranks. And you can start to say the same thing about Jim Miller.
I think so.
Yeah.
If you look at how that branched out so far, Jim had 10 on his own. Eric Keller has 3 now, and now Nick Mitchell has 6. So that's 19 championships that trace back to
more
Jim.
than all the coaches Gable coached.
Well, because he hogged them all. He hogged them all for himself. That's the thing, is he had 15.
Well, yeah. How many Big Ten schools are in there?
And what
that have coaches that graduated from Iowa?
Oh, I'd have to go through it, but a lot.
Ohio State, Indiana, Illinois,
Wisconsin. Yeah, list goes on, and that's it. Can
Purdue.
Even translate. Yeah, Purdue, Tony Ersland. So probably close to half. We could break that down. We just listed off quite a few right there, but. It is amazing when you're able to perpetuate that, and I think that's a great legacy for Jim Miller and a great legacy for Dan, that a lot of these guys have gone on to be successful at the Division I level in particular. Final thoughts on the in-state tournament. We have about 15 seconds here before we have to cut out. It's been a great season,
Again,
Doug.
my appreciation to the people of St. Louis. I loved it.
Yeah. I know
Absolutely loved it.
And we get to show some appreciation to Cleveland next year.
Uber works most of the time.
And elevators.
Yeah, okay.
All right, we're going to have a lot of fun. We have Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach at Grandview University. They smashed the competition. We're going to talk with him next on 1650 The Fan.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. Doug, our next guest, someone I always enjoy having on. He's a part of this area. He went to Wartburg College, part of that night train that we're familiar with, that was part of a championship culture at Wartburg, competed under Jim Miller, was a national finalist there, the head wrestling coach at Grandview. And it's fun to learn more and understand more about what's going on in Grandview. Before we get to Nick, we got to throw out these stats. Grandview set an all-time NAIA national championship record, 234.5 points. Second place, Lindsey Wilson, was 74.5 points. If you take the top 3 teams combined, 2, 3, 4, if you add those scores up, it still does not equal Grandview's 234.5 points. 6 championships in a row now for Grandview, all under our guest, Nick Mitchell. How are you, Nick?
I'm good, Kyle. Thanks for having me on.
Well, great having you on. And when I give you those numbers, you actually made a Facebook post about that, and you just did some data talking about that, and I learned a lot about this championship run. It has to be overwhelming every time that those numbers get mentioned.
Yeah, it is, realistically. I mean, you go through the tournament, and, typically I don't try to pay a ton of attention to the team score, throughout the tournament. Maybe check it at the end of the round, kind of see where we are. But, as you get towards the end and kind of have a chance to look at it and take it in, it was unreal. I mean, we obviously had a great tournament. It was awesome.
When do you start looking at the team score? Do you ever peek and just say, hey, we got to check in to see where we are, to see if we wrap this up, which you essentially did on day one, which is incredible. Is there a time that you kind of let yourself say, all right, we got this?
Not really. I'll try to make sure I don't look at anything until the end of each session, just to kind of see where we are and kind of go on from there. But one thing that I really try to make sure I focus on is just our guys individually. There's been a lot of years of those 6 years where we went into the finals and had the team score wrapped up, and the thing about that is I think it's important to go into those finals with that kind of same urgent feeling as if you need every one of those matches, because that's what those guys deserve. They don't need me feeling too comfortable going into the finals just because we won. Those guys need me to be prepared for them. So that's kind of the way I approach it every year. And
your college coach approached it that way. Jim Miller looked like he was going to have a heart attack pretty much through the championship finals. Then he was able to let go. Did you pick up on that when you were an athlete? Did you see Jim fretting about these things and pick up on it, or did you learn about that a little bit later?
Most of that was probably after. He did a good job, and it's something that we always talk about. Is as nervous as you are as a coach, it's also not my job to project my anxiety onto our team. It's about being confident, letting those guys know you're confident in their abilities, and the things I'm nervous about are things that they don't need to worry about anyway. They are the ones with the control, and I don't have any control, and that's what makes me nervous. So that's something that we've talked about a lot over the years. Both of those things, that idea of, hey, you gotta fake it. You gotta be confident. You can't be running around anxious and projecting your anxiety on those guys. And at the same time, you can't be too comfortable in what's going on, even when you do have a big lead, because it's still about those guys individually. Because we have had years where we won the tournament and maybe didn't feel great about how we finished individually with some of our guys, and it's not the same feeling as it was on a year like this.
Are you able to filter out what other people are saying, like me or someone else who says, hey, going into the national tournament, Grandview pretty much has it wrapped up before the start of the tournament? I don't know if you hear those things or if you want to hear those things. I don't think you do. But how do you filter those out?
I hear it. I don't like it. but I talk to our guys about it, too, because I know they hear it, too. And I remind them that it's a trap. It's a trap for all of us. For one, if those guys if they're feeling too comfortable because we're supposed to win something as a team, they're obviously not focused on the right things, because it's about what they can do individually. And for me as a coach, man, that is a huge trap. I mean, already looking at next year, I've had a few people I've talked to in some interviews talking about, is there any way you guys can get beat next year? And I'm like, man, are you kidding me? There's 100 ways. I off the top of my head, I can tell you 10 ways. It's just, that's your job as a coach. You have to have a little bit of that paranoia, and if you don't, somebody is going to catch you.
We are on the mat with Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach at Grandview University, NAIA team champions for the 6th season in a row. Grandview had 234.5 points. Second place, Lindsey Wilson had 74.5 points. Record for most points. Record for the biggest gap between first place and second place. We're on the line with Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach of Grandview and that team. Administratively, what kind of support do you get?
I have great support. I mean, our athletic director, Troy Plummer, he's been with me since the beginning. He's the one that hired me, and I was talking about this a little bit the other day. It's just I'm in a really fortunate situation. I'm really lucky I got the job down there, and I think that's one of those situations where, as you have success year after year, people start telling you that Grandview is lucky to have you, and that those guys better do what they can to hold on to you. And I still see it as I'm lucky that Grandview took me in, and I'm fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, and I'm really grateful for it.
It's a great commentary there, because when you're able to build, I think a championship team is won through administrative support, and I think that gets underappreciated. When you have that and you can feel good and go and do your job, how much does that elevate your motivation to want to continue to win championships?
Big time. I mean, knowing that they're going to work for me, as much as I want to put into this program, I know that they're there to support me and support our program, whether that's facilities or just making sure that we have the support we need with our coaching staff. I mean, with Coach Reedy, he's been with me for 7 years now, and he's a huge part of our program, and just knowing that our administration is going to support him too and do what we need to keep him around. So there's all these things that go into it. And, of course, then there's just the idea of, we go to nationals every year, and our president's there, our athletic director's there, our vice president's usually there. They come to every session. They come to our after party. I mean, they're a big piece of it. It's not like they're just in this administrative role. I mean, they're really part of the wrestling family here.
Do you hear from other NAIA programs about the administrative support that they get and how it matches or isn't close to yours? Do you hear from other programs?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it a little bit, and of course, typically what you hear is people complaining, and that's kind of just the nature of how people are anyway, but people like to complain about what they don't have or what they're not getting, and there's something to that. I mean, yeah, there is. It's not like it was always just Grandview said, here you go, take whatever you need. You have to earn those things, and I think that's something that is a good lesson for a lot of young coaches is, hey, you're not going to walk into a situation. We didn't have a format wrestling room when we started this program, but we built up a good program. We did the right things on and off the mat. We actually worked hard with fundraising, and we put a lot into that on our end of it too. And then the administration's really willing to support you and help you with those things if they know you're going to do your part too.
How would you describe your level of competitiveness? Jim Miller hates to lose. It burns inside of him. Is that how you approach the sport, or how would you internalize and articulate how you view competition?
And it is. It's that. I mean, it started with that. To be honest, as a younger guy, and what's really at my soul is I just hate losing. I mean, it's sometimes it's unhealthy. But what has become more about really trying to find out how good we can be as a program and what kind of level we can take this thing to. And so that's kind of become my driving force. And, again, there's always that. There's going to be that part of me that a huge part of me that this is all about. I do not want to lose. I don't want to take home a second-place trophy. I don't want to watch somebody else take home that trophy. But at the same time, it's not just about that because, yeah, we won the title by 160 points this year. But if we win the title by 6 points, we still get the same trophy. We still get the same banner. We still get the championship rings. But that's not good if you can win by 160. So it's really about that. I don't want to lose. I hate that idea of it. But it's more than just taking the trophy home. It's more than just winning. We have to find out how good we can be. And that's always the challenge. That's going to be the challenge for us every year.
So if you hate losing, is winning ever truly gratifying?
I'll tell you, it wears off quick. It wears off really quick. And part of it is because there's more. This year we did set the record, and we did have 5 national champions and 6 in the finals, and that was awesome. But I want to win all of them. I want to win every weight. I want to win every match. and I know that maybe sounds selfish or something that maybe is just something coaches say, but that's the real challenge, is to find out, like, what could we do better? And I know we could be better, and so that's always going to be the driving force.
We are on the mat with Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach at Grandview University. Nick has coached Grandview to the past 6 NAIA national championships. We're on the line talking about the most recent championship, which just occurred, set the all-time point record and the all-time margin of victory in NAIA competition. You had a great showing, and I just have to know, even with the qualifiers and then the NAIA tournament, does it ever get easy, or does the strangeness ever wear off that you might have 2 of your own teammates wrestling in the national tournament?
It is. I mean, there's always that thought, that can happen. And realistically, this year, we thought that could happen at a few weights. And it did one time. We did have the 2 finalists wrestle each other. And it was interesting because going into that, we always thought that was going to be the best thing, and it still is always going to be the goal. But it ended up being the most stressful match for me because I knew one of those guys was going to lose. And it was something I had never really thought about before. You go into any big match, and your plan is to win the match and celebrate afterwards. And this time we knew that no matter what, one guy was going to lose. And that's a tough thing to deal with as a coach. You always hurt for those guys. And so preparing for that before that match for me was stressful.
Because you're going to be elated. I mean, it's just you're going to get that package of emotions regardless of who wins and loses.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so strange. Jacob Cologne, a guy that is so much fun to wrestle. If I look up and down your lineup of the guy that, if you said, hey, who would I want to watch, he would be the guy. How much fun was he in practice to coach and have out there on the mat knowing that he was going to score big?
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to coach. I mean, partially because of the story, too. I mean, he took some time off when he came to Grandview. I think at the time he probably weighed 175, 180 pounds.
Wow.
His lifestyle wasn't far from a championship lifestyle, so he just watching him like come around and just become the guy we knew he could. And, you know, he's one of those guys who does everything right off the mat, and then you put him on the wrestling mat, and he's got some talent that you can't teach, you know, and every now and then he'd hit some funk or, you know, roll through his back and put somebody on their back, and I'd usually look at the guy next to me and tell him I was glad I taught him that move, but it was definitely all him.
And I'm always amazed that you have a guy like that. Is it fun for you when you see him doing so well against Division I competition?
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the idea. You know, when we talk about setting the bar high, our guys, they want to wrestle the best competition in every level at every division, and so it is. You know, that's part of the idea when these guys come here. The best guys we recruit are the guys that really take a level jump when they get here. That's part of why they like Grandview, is because they know they get to compete against some of those people.
Now, I'm not going to get on you about getting Wartburg on the schedule, which I think you should, but I think that a logical step would be to try to get Iowa State on the schedule. I know you guys did at one point. Could that materialize again? I think it would be a healthy thing. Des Moines and Ames, you'd have it right there. Any chance we're going to see Iowa State Grandview in the coming years?
I don't know. You know, if they invite us, we'll do it for sure. I mean, it was a lot of fun the last time. I mean, it was fun other than the part when we lost. It was a good duel, and it was something that, you know, like I said, I don't like losing, and I never feel like we're going to lose when we go into something like that. So that part wasn't fun, but it was cool. I mean, we got a chance to compete against those guys and did well. We wrestled Drexel that same day and we had a chance to beat that team. So, yeah, I mean, realistically, if we can make it work timing-wise, we're up for wrestling whoever. You know, I mean, we want to wrestle the best competition. We want to wrestle who the fans want us to wrestle, and so whoever that is, we'll do it.
Do you allow your imagination to run wild like fans do? And I know that we do this a lot and say, hey, where's Grandview in the mix of things? If they matched up against Northern Iowa or Wartburg or Iowa State, how would they match up? Do you do that a little bit and say, I wonder how we would do against these teams?
Probably more when you're at, you know, the tournaments like the NCAA tournament,
right.
You know, and you think, okay, if you could bring your full team here, you know, obviously I'm just assuming they're going to let us bring everybody, right? So
yeah.
So you just go and you're like, yeah, what would some of these guys do? And I feel good about some of these guys that we have. I mean, we've got some guys that can compete at a really high level. So, of course, you always think about that a little bit.
How do you do that? Because you do get 12 qualifiers for the NAIA tournament. How do you decide on who you're going to bring to the qualification tournament to try to get to the national tournament?
Yeah, that's a tough situation for us because we don't necessarily have to take somebody at every weight class either. So you can't take more than two guys at a weight. But, you know, this year was an example. We didn't take anybody at 125 or 157, and we ended up taking two guys at 4 different weights. So it's really about, you kind of have to look at the overall results of the year, you know, how these guys have done, where they fall seeding-wise. And then, of course, a big part of it for us always is who's really bought into the program, you know, who's doing things the right way, who, you know, because you get down to it, and this year was easily the toughest year we've ever had as far as deciding who those 12 are going to be. And then you get down to it, and it's like, okay, well, everything aside, you know, you feel like you maybe have 13, 14 guys that can go out there and really compete for a national title. Then you have to look at who's doing it right, you know, who's living the lifestyle, who's dominating in school, you know, those types of things.
Is that a tough conversation to have? Do the athletes that are not going to compete, it might be that 25-pounder, do you pull them to the side and explain why you're doing this? Because it might be a tough conversation for him to have.
Yeah, absolutely is tough. I mean, you know, because the big part of it is that everybody wants that shot. They want the opportunity. And you're kind of, you have to be the guy to let them know, like, hey, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen for you. And sometimes it's, you know, this year, and sometimes that means you're a senior and it's never going to happen. But that's part of the job, you know, is you have to, we preach all these things about lifestyle. We preach all these things about what our expectations are. they don't mean anything if you don't back it up. And so that's my job, is we have to make sure that we back up what we talk about.
Do parents give you calls and question why you might make a decision like that?
Not typically. I mean, I've been pretty lucky, and and people ask me that a lot, about this day and age, if I have to deal with parents, and our parents have all been really supportive. You get the occasional question here and there, and that's to be expected, but no, I mean, I think for the most part, people believe in what we're doing and in the decisions we make.
You excited about going for number 7?
Yeah, I'm just excited for the next challenge, and right now that's preparing for next year. We've got some freestyle stuff going on now, and just getting ready to go, doing recruiting. Obviously, that's really busy, and number 7 is a long ways away, but we've got a ton of work to put in between now and then.
A lot of people want to know if a Division I job or another job came open, would you ever be interested, or is Grandview the perfect fit for you for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, right now Grandview is the perfect fit for me. I mean, I love it here. We've got a great situation going, and it would have to be something really unique to pull me away. So as right now, I'm really happy with what I have going.
All right, we've been on the mat with Nick Mitchell. It's worth mentioning again, the record is absolutely astounding. Team score, Grandview 235.5 points, Lindsey Wilson 74.5 points. Set the all-time NAIA point record. Congratulations on that, and I hope we have you on again after the Division I tournament to talk about another national championship.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it. Let's make this a yearly deal.
All right, sounds good. That was Nick Mitchell, head wrestling coach at Grandview, another guy that knows how to win championships. They won another one. Wartburg College won, and that's thanks to Eric Keller and company. Eric Keller, head wrestling coach at Wartburg, is next on the mat.
Log on and listen online at 1650thefan.com, the online home of 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat, 1650 The Fan. I'm Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. The Wartburg connection continues. We have the head wrestling coach of Wartburg College. It's hard to believe this is his 4th year, won 3 championships in 4 years. Eric Keller on the line with us. And when I bring up those stats, 3 out of 4, but just the 4 years that you've been head wrestling coach on your own exclusively, is it hard to believe you're going into your 5th season?
Yeah, time flies, that's for sure. And I mean, it's one of those things that when you're doing what you love, you do kind of lose track of time. But it's a special place, and I feel fortunate to be doing what I'm doing. That's for sure.
I've asked you this before, but we have to ask now that the NCAA championships are over, the advice that Jim Miller gave you during that press conference when there was that transition there, as he said, take a vacation. Are you taking that advice?
I have not heeded that advice very well.
You haven't? Why not? I mean, if he's telling you and he's saying, hey, you got to take a vacation and recharge and get your battery recharged, why not take him up on that, at least for half a day?
You're absolutely right. It is something I need to get better at. I mean, we went down to St. Louis, I guess, for the Division Ones, and I tried to relax. And obviously I enjoyed the wrestling during the sessions, but my mind was still racing outside of it. And I mean, it's one of those things as a coach and as a competitor. I mean, you're always trying to figure out what's the next step. And obviously now that the season's over, recruiting is a huge element, and that's where our gears have shifted. And we're at the point now we're pouring everything we got into it and trying to figure out how we can win the next one.
Winning the next one, you just got this one, but it's got to feel good to know that you broke the tie with Augsburg. You guys came in tied at 12 apiece, and of course it was a battle between the Bergs, and you guys pulled ahead. Now you have 13 national championships. I know you can't rest on your laurels, and you want to extend that lead, but it has to feel good to be in first place right now.
It does. I mean, that was special. And, I mean, it's special any time you have an opportunity to have a group experience national championship. And, this senior group, they've won 3 out of 4 national championships. And our young kids, our freshmen, for them, obviously this was their first experience being on a national championship team. And every time it's unique. You got different makeup and different battles that you go through throughout the course of the season and things to overcome. But, the one thing that's definitely the same is it's special, and it's never easy. I mean, it's not easy to do it, but it's such a special thing, and I'm excited for the group, this team that they got to experience it. 129.5
points was what Wartburg had this season and came away with one champion. And I know that you never want to come away with national finalists without that championship. But overall, with 9 All-Americans, you have a champion. You had a very consistent season. How would you rank where this season ended up compared to where you wanted to start and what you had the picture in your head?
I mean, early on in the year, I knew we had a lot of potential, and it was one of those things that's all it was potential, and, I remember a few times throughout the season having meetings and telling these guys that it's going to take more, we need to do more, we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, what can I do, and that was each and every one of us as a coaching staff, and they did that, every single time that we had one of those meetings or had a conversation, they stepped up and rose to the occasion. And, it's hard to complain when you look back throughout the course of the season and they won everything, they won every single duel. They won the conference championship, the national dual championship, the regional, and the national title. But, the goal for us, and it remains this way, is every guy to wrestle at their full potential. And, we had some guys do that at the national tournament, and then we had a couple that had a few moments of let-ups, and it cost them. And so anytime you have guys that don't get what they want, it's hard as a coach to feel good. It's kind of the hard part about coaching wrestling. You got 10 wins, and unless every guy wins the championship, it's hard to leave feeling satisfied. And so, but overall, man, I'm telling you, I'm extremely proud of this group. And, even the national tournament, what a team effort. We had every single guy fight their butt off the whole time, and that's success does. And so, I'm extremely proud of this group and our coaching staff that put their heart and soul into every single guy. And, it's definitely a team effort all the way around.
We are on the mat with Eric Keller, head wrestling coach of the Division III NCAA Championship Wartburg College. We're talking about this is your 4th season. How have you changed? What's been the biggest change from when you started until where you are right now?
I think you get smarter every single year. Just you learn lessons as you go. And I think probably something that I've tried to do more in the last few years is keeping it as light and fun as possible. It's a sport, it's wrestling, and it should be fun. And it's one of those things that you try and really focus on through the course of the year is keeping it light, keeping it fun, and every single guy's motivated differently. And for us, we know our guys well enough to know what this guy over here needs is a lot different than what this guy over here might need. And helping guys throughout that process find their hot button, and find out what they're going to need and what it takes. So, just knowing your guys, and I think as a coach, you get smarter as you go, and knowing your athletes and what they need, and then obviously just utilizing your staff. It takes everybody, and you can't do everything on your own. And having good people around you and leaning on them, and that was a hard thing to do early. Trying to do it myself, but as you go, you start realizing that you got to be able to lean on your staff and have them help you. And I've tried to do that a lot more too.
Are kids coached differently? Do they need to be coached differently than even when you were in college?
I think so. I think it's a different type of kid. I think it's a different type of mindset. I think in the last even 5 years, you've seen a shift of the type of kids. And there's still some kids that they're still old school, I guess. But it is a different type of kid, and just adjusting to them.
And what is that? Is it that cell phone age where you kind of have to trick them into thinking it's hard work and maybe they don't want to work as hard? What goes into that?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of different things, societal factors. But, I guess for us, it's not necessarily the hard working part, because our guys, when they do come in, they want to work. They want to find out how good they can be. They understand that there's only one way to do that, and putting in the work and paying the price. But there's just a lot more distractions, I guess, you know. I mean, you're talking about the cell phones, you're talking about social media, you're talking about just there's just so many more distractions, I think, these days than what we had when we were growing up, you know. It was pretty simple for us back then. So,
do you have to create policies with that in mind about how you have practice and no cell phones in practice and different things that you have to implement?
We've never had to have it. We've never done that. We've never had an issue. You know, I mean, our guys, they it's one of those things that we talk about at the beginning of the year, and here's kind of the message is when you walk into the room every day, leave your baggage in the locker room. You know, whatever's going on in your life, whatever you have going on, you have a test, or you got an argument with your girlfriend, or whatever, you know, whatever the case may be, which everybody has something, you know. If you want to get the most out of what you're about to do in the next hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever the practice is going to be, come in here, leaving that baggage in the locker room. Come in here motivated. Come in here, shift gears. You know, this can be the best 2 hours of your day if you'll let it be. You know, and for most guys, it is. This is the time where they can come in and just let it fly, have fun, and get better, and not have to worry about anything else that's going on. And that's something that we really encourage guys and talk about, and they've done a really good job of that.
We are on the mat with Eric Keller, a head wrestling coach at Wartburg College. Wartburg just won its 13th NCAA Division III championship, which is the all-time record for Division III schools. They are now one ahead of Augsburg. They just won the title in 2017. Third title out of 4 years for you as the exclusive head coach. And there's another head coach that's doing some great things. They play second in the conference. That's Loris. TJ Miller, the son of Jim Miller, is doing some good things. Does that change the relationship when you see him coming on strong?
No, that's exciting. You know, obviously the Iowa Conference is, in my opinion, the best wrestling conference in the country. You know, and I feel like it's been that way for a couple decades. And you know, so the better the Iowa Conference does, and the more success the Iowa Conference has, you know, the better for us. And so we actually just had a conference meeting, and you know, that's one thing we were talking about because, you know, statistically, since the regionalization has happened in Division III wrestling, the Iowa Conference and the Central region, our region that we're in, has been the toughest qualifier in the last 5 years. And so, you know, that's a statement. That's a statement for wrestling in Iowa and for our qualifier and for our Iowa Conference.
And that has to be the hardest thing, really, with going into the national championships is how many guys are you going to send? You sent 10 guys, which is the max you can send, but that has to be the big point of nervousness is how are we going to get all these guys through? Because if you only get 5 through, that really makes it hard to win a championship.
No doubt about it. Absolutely, no doubt about it. That qualifier it's a stressful day, you know, because, you know, the top 3 qualify, and that's just the way it is. There is no wild card. There is no exceptions, and so there's just no margin of error that day, and you got to be at your best, and you got to wrestle at your best. And you know, we had 3 guys come back through on the backside and win several matches to get third to be able to qualify. And it's such a hard thing to do, and especially when you're coming out of the toughest qualifier to do that. And so it's I'm proud of our group because, you know, I mean, they stepped up and they weren't going to be denied and found a way to get there.
All right, I got to ask, how did you sleep on that Friday night of the national tournament?
Well, we had a really, really good quarterfinal round. I mean, we went 11-1 that Friday night, that round, because we had a couple pigtail matches as well. And so, you know, I mean, we had a lead, but you never feel great, you know, because number one, it wasn't over by any means. And, you know, beyond the team race, your number one thing is, hey, how are we going to get every one of these guys to get into the finals or guys that were already in the backside? How are we going to get them to come back and get third? And so, I mean, I remember, I don't know what time it was, maybe 2:45, somewhere in there. I remember nodding off. I was watching film actually for the next day, and I just remember telling myself, like, dude, go to bed. You're falling asleep watching film. You just go to sleep for a couple hours and get up in the morning and finish watching, because it's probably not that effective when you're nodding off watching film. So, I don't know. I didn't sleep a lot, but I wasn't as stressed as I would have been had it been a lot closer going into Saturday.
Yeah, I always got to mention your assistant coach, Chris Ortner. That guy's a stud, man. He puts in a lot of work, and don't mention him as often as we should, but that guy does some great work, and I'm sure you appreciate all the work he does for you.
He's one of the best in the country. There's no doubt about it. He's an outstanding recruiter. He's our head recruiting coordinator, and by far one of the best big guy coaches in the country at any level. And it was awesome at our banquet after the national tournament, and we had 165 all the way up. Every single one of those guys had to thank Coach Ortner from the bottom of their heart for what he's put into them and helped develop them. And it was powerful. It was really cool.
What does he do that's so good?
Well, he's in it for the guys. I mean, your athletes know when you're in it for them. And that's probably one of the best things that we have going is our guys know that, dude, we're here for you beyond wrestling, man. This is what we love to do. We're invested in your life. And when you're invested in their life and they know that you really, really, truly do care, they do special things. They'll go above and beyond. And those guys know he's invested. They know that he really, truly cares about them, who they are and their personal development and their growth. And so when he tells them to do something on the mat, when he asks them to make a change or change something or whatever the situation may be, they do it because they know, number one, he knows what he's talking about, but they also know this guy has their best interest at heart. And that's powerful.
Eric Keller, we've enjoyed having you on the program. Congratulations. Winning a championship is hard. You've done it 3 times. Congratulations on your 3rd national championship.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, Eric Keller, always great to have him on, and always, again, great to have him on for the reasons of Wartburg winning a national championship. It's been fun to have both Nick Mitchell and Eric Keller on the show.
Well, national champions. That's what we compete for.
Yep, that's all you have to say.
There's 2 of the best right today.
We're going to close this out. I'm Kyle Klingman. That's Doug Van Gelder. You've been listening to On the Mat.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.